Welcome to the video lecture about Yiddish. I apologize for the length of this video. It's actually not going to be very long, the video itself, but I'm going to ask you to take a look at a number of videos that are available on YouTube. So let's start just with a couple silly introductions. I apologize during this lecture if you find anything offensive, either politically or in terms of language. Um, and let's just begin. So the first thing I want you to do is take a look at this clip. You can type it into your browser. Again, just pause this video lecture, open up another window on your browser, copy or type the URL at the top, and you can watch a short video about Yiddish with Dick and Jane. Okay, now if you're back, I'd like you to take a look at this one, Yiddish with George and Laura. A little dated when George Bush was president, but you can take a look at this one also. Okay, welcome back. Now, Yiddish makes its way into popular American culture in many ways. One of the ways was with the Mel Brooks film Blazing Saddles. So I want you to watch this clip, and you might have to watch it a second time after I explain it, but pause please and watch this clip. Okay, so what we have here is this video from Blazing Saddles. It's toward the beginning of the movie, and Mel Brooks is the Indian chief, and he starts by saying he actually code switches back and forth between English and Yiddish. So he begins by saying Schwarzes, which means blacks. It's seen as a bit of a derogatory term now in Yiddish. And then he turns to the Indian who raises his tomahawk, who's getting ready to kill the people, and says, no, no. So there's some English. And he says, sei nicht meshuga, don't be crazy. And then he raises his arms to the heavens in a stereotypical Indian pose and says, lodzen gain, which means let him go. Then he switches back to English and says, kappa walk, it's all right. But then Yiddish, a gesinnt, as long as you're healthy. And then in English, take off. So they go, and then he turns to the other Indians and he says, Hotze gezen im de Leben, have you ever seen such a thing? And then switches back to English and says, they darker than us. Now let's take a look at one other piece of Yiddish in popular American culture. This is from the movie The Dictator. And take a look at this, pause the video, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, welcome back. So what I think is particularly interesting in this video, and again I apologize for the profanity if that disturbed you, but what's so interesting about it is the idea, first of all, Sacha Baron Cohen, the dictator, the guy who's trying to jump off the bridge, his mother is Israeli. And one of the things that he says about Yiddish that is so pertinent is he says about Yiddish, their words really sound like what they mean. And that's one of the things about the Yiddish language, and to get a little bit of background about Yiddish, is that it is a combination mainly of German written in Hebrew characters, and it includes some Hebrew also. And many of the words, as he accurately says, sounds like what they mean. So to give a little bit more background about Yiddish, let's take a look at this video. But first, a little background. This is about Abe Kahan, who was the founder of The Forward. Now, The Forward started as a Yiddish newspaper in New York City on the Lower East Side. And all of you in this class have subscribed to the daily email from the Daily Forward. The Forward is now mainly an English newspaper. It does come out in Yiddish, I think, every other week. So please take a look at this video. So now that you have a little bit of a background about Yiddish, you can learn from this video, especially about the Bintel Brief, that the Yiddish newspapers that appeared on the Lower East Side were really an incredible tool for Jewish immigrants to assimilate to the United States. They used it as a way to learn about American culture and to cast aside the old country habits that they had for a more American approach. Now, one of the things that's very prominent about Yiddish is curses. So here, if you take a look at this URL, you can type this in on your own just a little bit, and you can explore Yiddish curses for Republican Jews. I'm sure that if you were to Google Yiddish curses for Democrats, you could do that also. I happen to find this one very quickly. So the thing about a Yiddish curse is that it starts out like a praise, like you're praising someone, and then it turns around and gives them an insult. So, let's see, good one. You should make a fortune and spend it all on doctors. Or you should eat a feast of the most delicious foods imaginable, and every bite should make you sick. And then you can see some more here on this website. Now let's take a look at Yiddish theater. So this is a joke from a series called Old Jews Telling Jokes, and as you can see over here, you can go and Google a lot of these things. But what's interesting about this one with regard to Yiddish theater is it talks in particular about the Yiddish theater and the interactive nature of Yiddish. So why don't you take a look at this one? Now let's go take a look at this video. Fievel Finkel, or Fiveish Finkel. You might recognize him. He's been on TV. He has now died, I believe, but he has been on TV and some popular television shows and things like that. But he started out as a Yiddish performer. And this piece, A Border by My Wife, actually comes from a movie that was made in the 1930s. A Yiddish movie which talks about a married couple who are just having incredible problems with each other, and so they decide that they're no longer going to get married, but they're going to continue to live in the same house. And so the husband becomes a boarder, basically pays rent to his wife, and then they start dating again and falling in love. It's a very interesting and wonderful movie that unfortunately is not available on YouTube. But the main song about this concept is performed here in this video, and he does it first in English and then in Yiddish. So you can watch that. And then the final video for today is this one about American Matchmaker. Now this is also a Yiddish film, and what happened in the Yiddish theater is that theaters started to go out of fashion because the theater owners realized that by showing films they could make more money in the same space, and so Yiddish film grew out of the Yiddish theater. And this particular film is fascinating, and we have just a little clip here. It's fascinating because it talks about assimilation, which we dealt with on our last section of this class. And a matchmaker in Yiddish or in Hebrew is a shadchan. And here you have two matchmakers from the old school, the old country, who are trying to convince a new American matchmaker who also speaks Yiddish and is working with that community that they should work together. The old school matchmakers are really worried about them, running out of work and being cut out of things. And what's also fascinating about it is to pay attention to how they change from English to Hebrew throughout this brief clip. And that's our brief examination of Yiddish. I think that the reading also will help in terms of providing an introduction to Yiddish.